He didn't look like a killer. Christopher Bernard Wilder walked with confidence. His clothes were expensive, his smile polished, and his tone persuasive. Most people would never have guessed the truth behind the camera he always carried or the sweet-talking persona he perfected. But by 1984, America would know him by a chilling name, the Beauty Queen Killer. Wilder was born in Sydney, Australia, on March 13, 1945, the son of an American naval officer and an Australian mother. From a young age, he seemed troubled. At 17, he was involved in a serious assault case that landed him in therapy, not prison, an oversight that would haunt justice systems on 2 continents. Authorities noted his disturbing behavior, but after his release, he quietly left for the United States and disappeared into the backdrop of sunny Florida. In Boynton Beach, Wilder built a new identity. He became a successful electrical contractor, drove race cars on the side, and posed as an amateur fashion photographer. His pitch was always the same: "You've got the look. Ever considered modeling?" With a camera in hand and the promise of magazine spreads, he approached young women in malls, parking lots, and convenience stores. Sometimes, he simply took photos and left. But other times, his intentions were far darker. For years, small incidents flew under the radar. He was investigated more than once for inappropriate behavior, but none of it stuck. Wilder knew how to blend in, how to appear just harmless enough. By the time authorities began connecting dots in early 1984, he had already set a plan in motion, and it would unravel into a 6-week, cross-country nightmare. It began with Rosario Gonzalez, a bright, 20-year-old woman working as a model during the Miami Grand Prix. On February 26, 1984, she vanished without a trace. She was last seen in the company of a man who fit Wilder's description. Her car was found days later, her belongings untouched. There was no struggle. No sign of where she went. A week later, it happened again. Elizabeth Kenyon, 23, was a former pageant queen and a respected teacher in Coral Gables. She had briefly dated Wilder but reportedly broke it off weeks earlier. On March 5, she vanished after telling a friend she was meeting someone. Her vehicle turned up in a parking lot. Her body was never found. For investigators, 2 missing women with a known link to the same man was more than a coincidence. A closer look into Wilder's past revealed a disturbing history, allegations, complaints, and an early conviction in Australia. But by the time he was officially named a suspect, he was already gone. Wilder had left Florida. And what followed was one of the most terrifying killing sprees in American history. On March 18, 19-year-old Terry Ferguson was last seen at a shopping mall in Merritt Island, Florida. She had told her mother she was shopping for a dress. Hours passed, and she didn't come home. Flyers went up. Local news ran her photo. But the person who had approached her in the parking lot was already hundreds of miles away. A day later, in Tallahassee, Wilder struck again. He approached Linda Grover, a student walking through a department store. He claimed to be a modeling agent and offered her a shoot. When she declined, he attacked. Grover was abducted but, through sheer will and courage, managed to escape. Injured and frightened, she provided police with a detailed description. Her story gave investigators a vital lead, one of the first survivors to identify him directly. But the spree didn't stop. In Beaumont, Texas, on March 21, 23-year-old Suzanne Logan went missing after going out to eat alone. Her car was found days later, but she was gone. Her disappearance received minimal media attention, overshadowed by the growing list of women reported missing across multiple states. It would take weeks before the full extent of Wilder's movements would come to light. Next came Colorado. On March 25, in Grand Junction, 21-year-old Cheryl Bonaventura was seen having lunch with a man described as polite, well-spoken, and camera-ready. She had been excited about a modeling opportunity. It was the last time anyone saw her alive. By now, the FBI was involved. Wilder was crisscrossing the country, Florida, Texas, Colorado, often traveling thousands of miles in just a few days. He used rental cars and frequently changed license plates. Police suspected he was picking up women he saw alone in malls or stores, striking quickly and leaving little evidence. Many of the victims had been aspiring models or pageant participants, young, hopeful, and unaware that the man offering them a future was hiding a violent past. On March 29, he appeared in Las Vegas, where 18-year-old Michelle Kaufman vanished. She was a contestant in a modeling competition and had just arrived in town. Witnesses saw her speaking with a man who carried a camera. Her body wouldn't be discovered until weeks later, in a shallow grave across state lines. The FBI issued an arrest warrant. A task force was formed. Posters with Wilder's face were distributed nationally. He was now on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, and yet, he remained elusive, calculating, mobile, and determined to stay ahead of the law. On April 1, in Torrance, California, he approached Tina Marie Rizzico, a 16-year-old high school student. The details of their interaction would remain disturbing for years to come. She would not be his next victim, instead, she would become something entirely different. By the time police caught up to his trail, Wilder had vanished once more. But the end was drawing near. She wasn't supposed to survive. But Tina Marie Rizzico did. By the time Christopher Wilder pulled into a Southern California parking lot in early April 1984, his spree had already claimed at least 5 young women. Tina, a 16-year-old high school student, was walking through the lot when he approached. He was friendly, well-dressed, and persuasive, flashing a camera and dangling the same offer he'd used so many times before: "You've got a great look, have you ever thought about modeling?" He didn't give her a chance to answer properly. Moments later, Tina found herself in his car, paralyzed with fear. But unlike the others, she wasn't immediately killed. Wilder drove her out of Los Angeles. When she tried to reason with him, he listened. When she obeyed, he spared her. And so began one of the most terrifying road trips in American criminal history. They headed north, through California and into the open vastness of Nevada. Wilder told Tina she was lucky. That he wasn't going to hurt her, as long as she did what he asked. Somewhere along the highway, he stopped at a motel. Tina stayed quiet and compliant. She was terrified, but she listened, watched, learned. In a moment of grim clarity, she realized her best chance wasn't to run, it was to stay alive long enough for someone else to stop him. But the nightmare only deepened. In Victorville, California, Wilder stopped at a gas station. He needed another car, and he knew exactly how to get one. While Tina sat silently in his vehicle, he approached 17-year-old Dawnette Wilt and 33-year-old Beth Dodge. The encounter escalated quickly. Wilder forced Dawnette into his car at gunpoint, then drove both girls to a remote area in upstate New York, Mills, Indiana, almost 2,000 miles from where they'd started. Dawnette would later survive her ordeal. She told investigators that Wilder had taken her to a gravel pit, restrained her, and inflicted unspeakable abuse before stabbing her and leaving her for dead. Bleeding and barely conscious, she crawled to a nearby road, where a passerby miraculously found her. Beth Dodge would not be so fortunate. Needing to switch vehicles again, Wilder forced Tina to accompany him and Beth to a secluded lot in Victor, New York. There, without hesitation, he shot Beth in the back of the head and dumped her body in a gravel pit. He took her gold Pontiac and told Tina they had to keep moving. By then, she had seen and heard everything, and knew what he was capable of. As the pair continued driving, Wilder grew paranoid. Gas stations, fast food joints, side roads, every stop carried risk. He started changing license plates more frequently, stopping for supplies in isolated areas, moving only at night. Tina, meanwhile, remained his reluctant companion. She responded calmly to his commands, maintained a passive demeanor, and observed everything. She later told police that her survival strategy was simple: give him no reason to panic, and no reason to kill. While Wilder moved through the Northeast, the FBI was closing in. His face was everywhere, plastered on wanted posters, broadcast in national news segments, and featured on billboards. Investigators coordinated across state lines, tracking credit card use, car rentals, and survivor testimony. The longer the spree went on, the more certain authorities became that Wilder was spiraling, and wouldn't stop until he was dead or caught. They were right. On April 13, 1984, Wilder pulled into a small service area in Colebrook, New Hampshire, just miles from the Canadian border. He had Tina with him, but the stress was beginning to fracture his control. He parked near a repair garage under the guise of needing mechanical assistance. 2 local state troopers, Leo Jellison and Wayne Fortier, had received reports of a man matching Wilder's description in the area. They spotted the Pontiac and moved in. As the officers approached, Wilder appeared calm, until he wasn't. One of the troopers attempted to frisk him. That's when Wilder reached into his coat. A struggle erupted. 2 gunshots fired in rapid succession. Wilder had drawn his weapon and fired into the scuffle. But in the chaos, the barrel turned inward. One shot tore into his chest, the second into his abdomen. He collapsed. By the time emergency responders arrived, he was dead. Tina, remarkably, was unharmed. It was over. Christopher Wilder's death ended one of the most intense manhunts in modern FBI history. But the questions were just beginning. In a span of just 47 days, Wilder had moved through Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Nevada, California, Indiana, New York, and New Hampshire, crossing thousands of miles and leaving a trail of trauma that was hard to calculate. His known victims numbered at least 8 women murdered and 4 others who narrowly survived. But investigators believe the true count may be higher. Tina, shaken but alive, became a vital witness. Her account helped law enforcement piece together Wilder's final weeks, his routines, his habits, and his unraveling state of mind. Her survival wasn't just miraculous, it was instrumental in bringing his story to a close. But even in death, Wilder left behind haunting uncertainty. When Christopher Wilder fell to the pavement in New Hampshire, bleeding from 2 gunshot wounds, one of them self-inflicted, it felt like a full stop to a story too terrifying to continue. But in reality, Wilder's death wasn't the end. It was the start of a deeper reckoning. Because long before his name landed on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, long before Tina Marie Rizzico rode in silence beside him through 8 states, Wilder had been perfecting the darkness inside him. And the real question, one that law enforcement still can't answer with certainty, is this: how long had Christopher Wilder been killing before the world noticed? The violence that erupted across the US in 1984 wasn't the beginning. It was the breaking point. Born in Sydney, Australia, in 1945, Wilder's early years were marked by affluence and opportunity. His father was an American naval officer. His family had money. He wasn't some forgotten street kid. He went to private schools, drove sports cars, and got into trouble that money often erased. But in 1963, at just 17, he was convicted of participating in a gang rape. He served only probation. Just 2 years later, the Wanda Beach murders rocked Australia, 2 15-year-old girls, raped and killed in the sand dunes near Sydney. Though Wilder wasn't charged, he was already on probation at the time, and the timeline raised red flags. He lived near the area, had a record of violence toward girls, and knew the beach. The case remains unsolved. In the decades that followed, Wilder bounced between Australia and the US, racking up a disturbing pattern of sexual assault charges. He posed as a modeling agent. He cruised beaches and malls. He targeted the young, the trusting, and the beautiful. But each time, he slipped through the cracks, legal technicalities, withdrawn charges, or fines instead of prison. By the early 1980s, he had quietly built a life in Boynton Beach, Florida. He owned a successful construction business. He was charming, tanned, and stylish, a regular on the South Florida singles scene. Women remembered him as polite, even generous. He often brought a camera, always hunting for models. It was here that 18-year-old Tammy Lynn Leppert disappeared in July 1983. Tammy was a beauty queen, an actress, and a rising star in the Florida modeling scene. Before her disappearance, she confided in friends that she was being followed. She became paranoid, withdrawn. Her mother would later say Tammy was scared of someone, terrified, but refused to say who. She was last seen leaving her home with an unidentified man. She never came back. Though no evidence linked Wilder to her disappearance, the circumstantial details were haunting: a young, beautiful girl, immersed in modeling, vanishing near Wilder's home base. Her body has never been found. And she wasn't the only one. As FBI agents scoured Wilder's personal effects after his death, they found photographs, dozens of them. Some matched known victims. Others were unknown. Young women, smiling for the camera, never identified. Some were likely survivors. Others may never have made it home. Despite Wilder's cross-country trail being cut short, the bodies he left behind revealed a pattern of escalation. From Rosario Gonzalez, last seen at a Miami beauty pageant in February, to Michelle Kaufman, abducted from a fashion show in Las Vegas in April, his spree evolved from carefully staged disappearances to chaotic violence. Victims were found stabbed, strangled, shot, electrocuted. And then there were those never found at all. Like Elizabeth Kenyon, a 23-year-old schoolteacher who once dated Wilder. She vanished just a week after Gonzalez. Her body was never recovered. FBI profilers theorized that Wilder's switch from control to chaos wasn't random. Something had snapped. Whether it was pressure from being under suspicion or a complete psychological break, his final spree bore all the signs of a man no longer concerned with being careful. He was bolder, more brutal, sloppier, but also far more dangerous. By the end of his spree, Wilder had abducted or attempted to abduct at least 12 women. 8 were murdered. But the real number could be much higher. Investigators in states like Florida, Texas, Utah, Nevada, and California began re-examining unsolved cases that matched his modus operandi: young women lured under the pretense of modeling or acting, last seen entering a car, then gone. And there was one more detail, something that truly disturbed even seasoned agents. Wilder often photographed his victims before killing them. Some of those photos were recovered. Others were missing. A few might still be sitting in unsolved cold case files, misidentified as amateur modeling shots. Police believe he used these images to relive the crimes, fuel for the fantasy that never seemed to stop growing inside him. For Tina Marie Rizzico, the girl who survived him, the trauma lived on for decades. She had watched him kill. She had been used to lure other victims. She had been a silent witness to a horror few could imagine. And yet, she had survived by reading him, by staying calm, by pretending to be just passive enough that he never turned on her. Her testimony helped the FBI connect timelines. Her memory became a map of Wilder's final days. She told them everything: how he talked to himself, how he selected victims, how he once stared at a passing girl and muttered, "She's perfect." The FBI credited her with saving lives. After Wilder's death, Tina disappeared from public life for a long time. When she finally did speak publicly, years later, her voice was steady but cold. "He trusted me," she said in one interview. "That's the only reason I'm still alive." Christopher Wilder is buried in a modest grave in Florida. There is no marker detailing the devastation he caused, no monument to his victims, no confession in death. But his story stands as a warning, a blueprint for how charm, wealth, and manipulation can shield a predator for decades. He operated in broad daylight. He smiled for the camera. He moved freely from country to country, state to state, one life to the next. And though he is gone, some of the women he may have killed are still out there, waiting to be found. The mall stalker. The man with the camera. The killer who promised fame and delivered only death. Christopher Wilder remains one of America's most chilling examples of evil hiding in plain sight. Thank you for listening to Crime Echoes with Lewis. For more content like this, please like and subscribe to my channel.